Now we are continuing with our next session, which is going to be a good steer of in-person and online presence. And the topic will be reimagining the physical workplace, the flexible workplace of the future. In the next hour, we will uncover what the future global trends are and what their impact is on the future workplace strategy. Our panelists will share best practices in building a flexible and digital workplace and what are some of the secrets behind building a better workflow.
For this panel, we'll again have a full stage with 4 speakers, 2 of them online and 2 of them here on stage. Let me briefly introduce each of them. First, we have Thomas Brauner, who is a sales and marketing manager at Split Vision. With leadership roles in collaboration technology companies such as Cisco and Atos, Thomas has successfully helped companies and organizations use technology the way they work for the better. Amber Hoskins is a customer success lead at FlowSpace. She is all things ops and customer success at FlowSpace, bringing her 7 years of operational experience from hospitality industry into the tech startup world and helping the co-founders on changing the way the world works. Next on the list is Ieva Dvilinskiene. Ieva is a co-founder and chief growth officer at FlowSpace, a booking platform for teams of tomorrow to get together. She is a brand builder, GTM strategist, optimist, and a go-getter. Last but not least, we have Charlie Morris, a practice leader at Avison. He began his journey in the commercial real estate sector as an office tenant rep for 12 plus years at various firms before transitioning into the startup world as director of the business development at Liquid Space. He now leads the Avison's Global Flexible Solutions practice. Moderator of this session is our colleague Michael Everts, a product marketing manager at OfficeRnD Flex. Let's not waste another minute and welcome our speakers on stage and online as well.
Great. Welcome. Thank you guys for all joining us at today's panel at FlexWorld. As they mentioned earlier, my name is Michael Everts, and I'm a former workspace owner and a product marketer at OfficeRnD. We are so excited to have you all here for our FlexWorld panel focusing on reimagining the physical workplace. As companies embrace hybrid work across the world, leaders now have a rare opportunity to maximize the potential of office space to better support their teams. Hybrid workers overwhelmingly want to continue flexible work in the long term, and that desire has major impacts on everything from daily productivity to company loyalty to even how the office is configured. Hour-long conference meetings have turned into quick video calls with kids playing in the background and a dog begging for attention. These new realities have forced us to rethink what we have all become so accustomed to when it comes to interacting with coworkers, clients, and consultants in the physical workplace. The same way we brought our offices into our own homes, we need to bring safety, comfort, and flexibility into our workplace. Now, to rethink and rebuild our workplaces to be resilient to future challenges. And now, I'm thrilled to have with me today workspace experts in both flexible and hybrid work. I'm going to very briefly introduce our panelists by name, but jump into our first question. Free to tell a little bit more about yourself so our audience can understand your expertise, and how to apply it works. In person with you guys today in London, we have Ieva Dvilinskiene and Amber Hoskins from FlowSpace, and virtually with me is Young and Thomas Brauner from Split Visions. Thank you guys all so much for being with me. All right, let's get this started. I'm going to ask this first question to everyone, and I think we should start with the site in London. So Ieva, we'll start with you. Ieva, how do you define hybrid work today, and how will this affect the workplace of the future going forward? Take it away.
I think crucially, intentional team time is the future. Gone are the days when we used to go into an office and sit in the corner and do our own deep work, individual work. We now, when we get together into an office, we need to have that time spent purposefully. So first of all, when you think about the occasions like brainstorming, QBRs, sales reviews, any kind of tech sprints, that's when you need to get together. But otherwise, let's not commute. Why we should spend time wasting on that? And going forward, I like this line a lot. Half the time, double the experience. So half the time of the commute, half the time of the time spent when you are in the same room with all your teammates, but you are on Zoom calls, but double the experience. When you are together with the team, go to a space that makes you network, connect, and actually create value for your business. That's me.
Awesome. Amber, take it away.
I think Ieva said that really well. But I do think that the old blueprint of how the office and work world used to be, it obviously doesn't work anymore. There's far too many industries that need too many different environments to be inspired. So I think I've heard the word intentional quite a lot today, which I think is really important. Teams are now more focused, okay, so what do we need to do this week? What type of environment do I need to do it in to make sure that I'm like nailing this project? So yeah, I think intentional is a good word to use. That's me too.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the coming back to the workplace needs to be intentional. It can't just be something that you try to figure out as you go along, but it needs to be planned and intentional. Charlie, what are your thoughts on how would you define hybrid work today?
So I think hybrid at the end of the day means something different to every organization. It means something different to every individual employee. I think at the end of the day, instead of using the word hybrid, and yes, that defines one of the portfolio strategies corporations are utilizing, we prefer to use the word decentralization. Coming from the brokerage backgrounds, historically it was that centralized office. And, what has happened during COVID is we started thinking way too binary, from my opinion. It is either a centralized office, work from home. There's a multitude of optionality in between those two that can complement and or supplement the either one. And employees are in a unique position that they never have really been before to dictate and or very much influence, if nothing else, overall portfolio management strategies. And I personally believe that workplace optionality is going to be the biggest recruitment and retention tool for corporations of the future. And I think that everyone just needs to leverage all the different data information, and more than anything, take surveys, polls from their individual employees to figure out what hybrid means to them in particular, or what that means ultimately to your overall portfolio management strategies of the future.
Workplace optionality. I really like that phrase. I think that's really relevant and something, you're right, that employers will have to give to people that are looking at their company to be real contenders. Thomas, take it away. How do you define hybrid work today yourself?
Thank you very much. Well, that's a good question. Actually, what we are doing, we are facing the end customers every day, different end customers, and have different interpretations of hybrid workplace, and they are trying to figure out, what is the hybrid workplace and what does that mean for them. How should they and how could they adapt to a hybrid workplace? What could it mean for them? So what we are trying to do is to provide examples of a best practice, if you will, show them actually facts, what is happening. So as I've been working with this within this industry now for more than 15 years, trying to actually promote this kind of work. And now the pandemic has created a long-term sustainable impact on the role of collaboration technologies that has dramatically changed the work and the personal lives, right? So the future of work is here and now. And what we are doing is sharing best practice to help the customers to actually make their investments as big as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. In continuing on this theme, of the hybrid workplace and these companies that are implementing different strategies, can you give us some examples, Thomas, of companies that have both succeeded and failed in your experience to adapt to this new hybrid workplace? Yeah, well, I can do, because what we are saying, the investments is so small, the values are so big. And I guess that everyone can agree, everyone in this session can agree that the values are big. You don't know how big they are. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to provide
and share reports from organizations like McKinsey, Accenture, BSP, etc., just to show the values that this hybrid work is creating for an organization, not only the individuals, because the individuals are driving this hybrid work actually, because it's here to stay. People are moving to out of the cities, right? Because they can work hybrid. They can choose an employer far away, which they couldn't before, etc., etc. And what we are seeing is great examples of this. I talked to an IT manager the other day, and he just did that actually, moved away, far away from the city, and are still been able to continue his work. And all the office has adapted to this hybrid workplace. But the hybrid workplace is not only one investment, it's a combination of investments, and they need to be aligned as a workflow. So they need to talk to each other. And that I believe is the best practice that we could share. Actually, where you are able to organize the booking that you are supplying, right, with the information, with the security of both the digital, but also the physical meeting. With your presentation, that was great, and then entering the meeting in a good manner, especially within large organizations. That is crucial to have an ease of use. What people do wrong is actually invest less. The investments are so small. Actually, the investment compared to the value, the investment is, or the value is 40 times the investment. Yeah, it is. So if you do actually just trying to save some money in your investments, which is small, you lose so much money. And we can see that over and over and over again when people are trying to actually save and not spending that extra small amount of money.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, Ieva, do you mind sharing some of your experiences as well on this for companies that have succeeded or failed in their attempt to kind of manage this new hybrid workplace?
Sure, and to give some context, FlowSpace is a startup that has been operating for 18 months, so created during COVID, and we have been learning together with the clients what are they looking for, how they want their teams to get together, how often, and where, and how. So I love, Charlie, I think you used the word decentralization, and I think that's the key, one of the key insights that we have witnessed. And maybe, Michael, if you have a chance now to share a slide that we brought from our previous presentations that we did, like showcasing what kind of decentralization in London we have observed. What it shows basically that previously people would commute into one space. They would have to go for 5 days a week into one location in London, or take it any city in the world. And after COVID, a lot of teams chosen to decentralize their office space and potentially downsize them. However, different teams need to get together on different terms, depending on what kind of work they do. So they would get together, they would pick like 4 or 5 locations through FlowSpace platform, where it makes sense for their teams to get together. For example, we do work with TechSpace. So there's a team where their marketing team is based, they live around Shoreditch, Hackney, this area, so they would use TechSpace here in the basement to get together for their brainstorming activities. And so this is a setup. What we have seen is obviously some failures and some successes. I wouldn't call it a failure, but let's say they still have more work to do to become successful. So it's a tech company, 50 people, based in London. During COVID, they downsized their office from 50 desks to 10 desks, which was a huge savement, like huge cost cutting. However, even though their team gets together also using FlowSpace, or they have access to those 10 desks, there is never an occasion for all 50 people to get together. They don't have that routine. So after a year's time, they have seen an effect on their culture. Teams separately work together well, but when you take the whole group together, they don't have enough touch points. Where we have seen downsizing successful is when a team of 30, a B2C tech business selling plants here in the UK, they actually downsized from full-time office to a part-time office. So through FlowSpace, they found a part-time office where they can have access for 2 days a week. For 3 days a week, another team is using the same space. So they still have that time together and saving costs. I think these are two examples how important it is to set routines for your team, depending on what kind of work you do.
Yeah, no, I think that absolutely makes sense. Just framing it for your team, your employees, so they know how to come back in. Great. So I want to move on to the next question. This one's somewhat related, but it's more talking about the physical workplace and some of the products. And this is something that I personally get really excited about. But yeah, the question is, how should physical workplaces adapt to support the next generation of hybrid work? What kind of technologies and office products do these new offices need to be investing in? And we'll continue the trend. We'll stick with the local guys. Amber, take it away.
I guess I'll take this from the physical space point of view, not the tech side. So obviously during COVID, what we noticed is there were habits formed. A lot more people are taking Zoom calls. A lot of people decided to move back home, wherever that was, whether it's in England or international. And everyone was on the phone or talking through a screen a lot more. I didn't know what it would look like when we were reintroduced back into normal working. But we've seen that some of these habits are really strong and people like them, which is fair enough because, like I said, some of the teams that use us now, their headquarters are in London, but then the rest of their team work all over the world. So especially from customer feedback sessions that I've had, phone booths, massive. There's not enough phone booths in these spaces. Meeting rooms, I think it's quite impressive how many meeting rooms are in London, but it doesn't seem enough, which is I find quite funny. So over the last couple of months, we've noticed that teams that just want to get together and they want to be in the same room. They don't really want to have a screen in front of them. They want to have that brainstorming sort of environment, which is really lovely. And just for an example, we have a couple of fintech companies that their headquarters are in Sydney. So every couple of months for 2 weeks, they'll come over to London and then they ask us to find them a home for 2 weeks, where the whole team will get together for 2 weeks in one space and just be a team, I guess. So yeah, on the physical side, I call it the phone booth gate of 2022 because there isn't enough. So yeah, I guess physically in a workspace, there needs to be more areas where teams can get together without any disturbances from everywhere else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're completely right about those phone booths. You know, I rarely see an office where there is enough phone booths. There always seems to be a phone booth shortage. But yeah, that's definitely one of the products I think that has helped us made it through over the past couple of years. Charlie, why don't you jump into some of your experiences with these physical products that these offices need to be investing in to stay relevant?
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back again to what I opened up with. It's product diversification. Agree completely with commentary from Amber there around, meeting space, phone booths. Those are being, more highly utilized and needed in both the flexible workspaces as well as the traditional centralized workspaces, because that's why people are utilizing the office to come together, right? Then it becomes a function of how big are those in terms of those respective spaces? I mean, I know, Michael, you and I have talked about, we sat in a conference room the last time we got together in person. That was a 10-person conference room. There was 2 of us in there. Not necessarily the best use of that respective space, but it's understanding what is being used, how much, and making sure that as you're building out new spaces, you're thinking about that as appropriate to make sure that you're maximizing return and utilization of these spaces. But it's making sure that beyond that space, it's, again, making sure you're delivering space that can be delivered for that hourly, daily need to that, monthly, yearly, and multi-year in certain scenarios. It really depends on the asset, where the location is, the demographics that you're trying to go and appeal to in terms of size of clientele. If we're talking enterprise, it's just something different than your, local entrepreneur, startup type needs. So you've really got to deliver that, some combination of some open workspace. That's definitively diminishing from our perspective in terms of the need from that side, but more private offices. Those are always, probably the best return on investment for the respective operators, the small 1-2 person offices. And then you have to think strategically around once you start getting into those team spaces, the more enterprise suites. There's only, so much that we would recommend, and you really have to be very strategic about how much to deliver on that. And that to me is where you also need to think about as an operator, for those in the room, that's probably the majority, is how do you do that ideally in collaboration, integrated with your building owner? What is it that they're going after? How can you work to support those type needs through different workplace products where it's not completely on you? You can help service those to be able to respond to some different needs. And that to me is just becomes critical, and that's candidly what's missing. I saw various articles in London and beyond in terms of what we are envisioning for the future. Like the flexible supply is going to need to continue to grow to support the demand. Right now, I think people are still trying to figure out exactly what that needs may be in the future. But as we're getting to that 2, 3, 5%, depending on what market you're talking about in terms of available flexible supply in that market, if the plus or minus 30% is a number that's been thrown out for years now, but we believe that that is potentially short in terms of what's available, and that's where the institutional owners who actually own those assets, they're going to be paramount in the growth of the flexible supply and how the flexible operator community works with those to deliver these more diverse products that can, again, be delivered hourly, daily, monthly, yearly. You have to think about a little bit of everything and how that ultimately is going to work for you to demand the highest return on investment from both you and or the building owner.
No, I love it. I think the diversification of products based on the length of time and the usage is so important. When we spoke a couple weeks ago, you mentioned multiple times, Charlie, it wasn't a spec suite. I think you were calling it a team suite, but what was the name of it?
Agile suite is our term. It's kind of our catch-all for for those that are not familiar with that vernacular. A lot of people are familiar with managed suites. Or managed spaces, that instant office, Notel. There's various operators that have been known for delivering that type of space. These are the type of spaces that, as far as we're concerned, institutional owners can go and deliver. At a minimum, what that agile suite typically means, it's typically what we say is team needs for 20 or more people that want their own private secure space. It's your pre-built, your spec suite, depending on your vernacular, on steroids, and it's delivered with, at a minimum, furniture and technology, and then different levels of services. And that's where some of that opportunity comes into play for collaboration with the owners and the operators in the respective assets, neighborhoods, et cetera. But we envision that as being the biggest driving force to some of the overall supply chain needs, because during COVID, what we've seen is the two biggest growth areas from our perspective were that type need, and there's a very big lack of supply there. And the on-demand needs, that's the hourly, daily, and we're seeing the rise of different technology providers that are working with operators to make sure that these spaces are available. And those are the two biggest product types that we see in high demand right now, that are on top of the traditional product delivery that's, the flexible operators are known to deliver.
Yep. Awesome. No, I love that term, agile suites. I just wanted to have you talk about it, but that's perfect. And yeah, it seems like a lot of these employees and companies coming in are looking for these pre-made, ready-built solutions with furniture already in there. That's kind of what they're expecting when they want to come look at these offices. And I think that's a pretty drastic change from even 2 or 3 years ago, where they'd come tour an empty office and say, yeah, let's buy 60 desks and do it. Now it's kind of pre-selected for them in a way. So yeah, and Thomas, I know you had a little bit about to share specifically with some of the physical products and technologies. Tell me how you believe physical workspaces should adapt to support the next generation of work.
Yeah, I will try to tell you about it. The thing is now we have a couple of common opportunities together with you guys. I just talked to Dimitar this earlier today about the one opportunity we have, like it's at 20,000 clients actually, opportunity we have, and we need to actually make this very clear for the customer to what they need to invest in to make this possible. And I love the story or the talks that you had about the phone booth, because we are talking about sort of the same thing when it comes to packaging and distributing the solution, especially the hardware, globally to 20,000 people. Ending up in every corner of the world. We need to have a product that is very simple to set up, simple to maintain and support and to use, right? So it's not rocket science when you know how to do it, but out of 20 decisions, actually choices that you have, that's our experience, by the way, out of 20 choices you have when it comes to decisions regarding this physical workplace, 19 could be wrong, actually, or not as good as the one perfect choice. Actually, what I see, or what we see, is that the market is still quite immature when it comes to the potential it has. So there's a lot to expect coming years, I would say, actually, to make this possible, because it's been very local, right? We have done small rollouts, even though it's been large corporations. They've done, compared to today, it's been really small deployments. And now we are rolling out this in a big scale, and this is challenging. Even the platform like the one that we are using now, if you have used this platform like 7 or 8 years ago, this may not have been possible, actually. So the technology is actually growing, and the potential of the technology is growing. So what we are doing, we as I mentioned in the beginning, we look at the workflow, and your product is just great. Yeah, it's a cloud product, right? Yeah. So it's and everything actually starts from there, and you're doing a great job there. So when it comes to organizing, right, being able to work from home whenever you like to, or wherever you are, and then book your resources as you're going in, whether it's on your office, or if there is a sub office somewhere, or book your parking space, whatever. So planning ahead. Making sure that, and what the corporations are doing now and spending or saving a lot of money is cutting office spaces in half many times. Wow. And the union demands that everyone should have one a desk to work on. And what we're doing with your products is ensuring that they have a desk when they're coming in. So everything starts with that. And then when it comes to information, we are working with information panels in the physical office, outside the meeting rooms, in the public areas or common areas where they are at the entrance. When it comes to entrance solutions, that's also physical, right? Opening doors, ensuring that people are not entering a meeting that they are not supposed to enter, right? Because what we also provide is products in the meeting rooms, physical products, where the meeting ends up in a display saying, hey, here's your next meeting, press this button. If the door is open and you're gonna discuss HR, maybe, it's gonna discuss some hot topics, you don't want anyone to go in there and just push that button, but actually access the ones that are invited, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are doing. And so again, sharing the value so they understand that it's worth spending money on because it's a small amount, and then doing it the right way and making sure that everything is connected is very important to make it easy, because again, this is new for many.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And especially when you hit on the point with the door access for meeting rooms, we're seeing a lot of operators that, want to be able to manage their spaces more remotely, whether they're back home or whether they're in an office on another floor. We want to automate at OfficeRnD a lot of this stuff so that they don't have to worry about some of those manual actions. In this past year, we've seen many operators actually install door access on their meeting rooms. And what that means is that if you book a room at 3 p.m., you're going to get a key to that room on your phone right at 3 p.m. and can enter right at 3 p.m. So essentially, the technology in the office is managing that experience for you and automating and streamlining it. There's definitely something to be said about the personal touch that I definitely see some co-working operators, at least in the South of the US, like to do. But automating it is just going to make things more efficient and more simple for your team overall. Great. So those are some really good answers there. And I think useful tidbits of information, some of the physical pieces people can start putting into their co-working spaces or hybrid office. Let's move on to the next question. So this one gets back into the topic that I heard a little bit earlier today, talking about culture in the workplace. But I think this is an important part as well with the physical aspect of the workplace. And the question is, how can workplace managers reinvest in people, amenities, and culture for a better office experience? And Charlie, we'll start with you.
So to me, this is a little bit an easier one. At the end of the day, the flexible operator community has already been doing a great job of transforming the world of hospitality and experience that people are looking for today. As we continue to get into the consumer-based products that the flexible world is, and that is completely transforming how people are making decisions around their overall portfolio strategy, it's maintaining that position and candidly going a little bit further. The flexible operators have continued to do an amazing job and will continue to far exceed at least the stereotypical institutional owner that is delivering, a experience based around a lot of touch on the front ends. But once you get beyond that, multiple years into a agreement, it becomes more of a hands-off agreement. At the end of the day, and there's only so much interaction, and it's largely with the C-suite, office manager, whatever the case may be. So it's really honing in on how to maintain that higher end hospitality and experience management. How do you connect people internally from that culture side? How do people come together? People want to come together in a physical workspace, whether they're with their own team or a series of like-minded individuals, professionals, whatever. We don't want to all work from home all the time, or at least not everybody. Some people do, and that's fine. But how do you make sure that when people come, it's a welcoming environment? It is, again, whether it's with their team or not, and you're delivering the amenitization is a little bit different. You have to really think about what people in that area want, what is already existing in that market. And if something already exists within a physical asset of a building, let's not necessarily repeat that. That's where you go and make sure you're integrated with what the owner is providing today. If it's something in the broader neighborhood, making sure that people are aware of what's out there, why you even chose this as your location, and how do you go connect with some of the other amenities in the surrounding area. Make it a welcoming environment where people want to go to. Because it's a lot of people in my space in particular from the brokerage community are sitting there saying, how is the RTO return to office not leading to more higher utilization on a daily basis whenever we are all seeing people are going to sporting events, or going to concerts, or going to restaurants, or going out to eat. Those are all back to normal. Yeah. But the office is not. It's because the centralized office is not an exciting thing for a lot of different people. And that's where people are willing to go potentially pay more for a different experience. And yes, they may view this in like the stereotype of our industry is it's expensive. And it is if you look at certain components of it, but if you really look at an apples to apples comparison, Thomas mentioned it really well at the front end of this. You may be investing X amount on the front ends, and in the flex world, you're not necessarily having to invest anything in a lot of scenarios. You reduce that capital expenditure, you can get a higher number of people into the same space in certain scenarios, and or being able to make sure that you're getting that operational and financial drivers that are going to support your overall portfolio strategy. that it becomes a no-brainer from my perspective. And I want everyone to hear me say, I work for a large brokerage operation. Centralized office is not going away. However, it is being rethought, and I think a lot of those trends that are happening from the flexible operator community is going to be changing what the building owners as a whole are going to be doing. But how do we go and deliver a different experience to make people want to go to the office?
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be a tough issue for some of those more traditional, large, centralized office employers. They definitely have something to think about as they get people back to the office. Ieva or Amber over in London, can you guys tell us about how you think managers can reinvest in people, amenities, and culture for a better office experience?
Me to go? Okay, cool. I mean, Charlie, you sort of hit the nail on the head that I think managers now have to think, okay, what do I need to do to get people to come out of the comforts of their own home and to actually come into a workspace? There's a company that uses us that pick a space based off of the snacks in a vending machine, which I think is hilarious. But they love the snacks in the vending machine, and that's why they go there. But also, there's like restaurants, and there's crazy golf outside 5 minutes down the road. So it's more about, okay, we're going to come to this space, but what are we going to do once work is over, and how are we going to connect outside of work? I also think as well, I mean, there's like roles now. I've seen, job vacancies for team experience leaders. Companies are hiring people to come in to help them work on that culture since COVID, because the culture's suffering. I'll use me and Ieva as an example. Whenever we decide on what space we're going to go for a week, we like different work environments. I used to work in nightclubs, so if I work in a space that's way too quiet, I can't focus. It's not allowed to know. I do less work if the space is too quiet, whereas Ieva, you like the more quiet, calm, plant-filled workspace. But the way that we compromise, and I think we've also learned how to discuss openly on what we need to do, what environment we need to do the best work that we can that week is. You'll come up to me and say, right, what have we got this week? What do we need to do? What type of environment do we need to do it in? So I think the skill of just like open communication is massive. I think team leaders need to welcome that. So yeah, I guess open communication, and that's the most important, I think.
And I think one of the pointers to bring up is, for example, I think what was not mentioned yet is team offsites, team away days. It's something that we have seen emerging massively. Since work from home guidance was lifted, everyone is either remote, hybrid, offices decentralized, but teams want to get together. And I think, Charlie, what you mentioned was that the office is going to stay decentralized. And people are rethinking how the office is going to look like, so it would be worth for people to commute into it. Whilst it's being done, teams still want to get together, and there are not a lot of spaces like that in London. And as Amber mentioned, you think there are loads of meeting spaces in London. Well, yes, for 10 people to get together, you'd find anything. But if you're a team of 70 people, where are you going to get together for a week of worth of work? And that's where that team offsite, team experiential day, week, or a weekend is really needed. Probably most of you have already heard how Airbnb changed their policy. They're going fully remote. However, there's a huge caveat. They're doing team offsites for smaller teams every week, for a wider team every month, and then the whole team from the US, from a country, getting together every half a year, if I'm not mistaken. So even though the ones who are saying like they're fully remote, they're actually doing team offsites.
And I would just caveat that, like, yes, that is also what a fully remote team is doing. They're still utilizing Office in different forms, fashions. The same thing is happening for those that are Office-centric. A lot of these financial services firms, a lot of the, let's call it the more traditional Office users that are at the forefront in the media around saying the RTO, everyone mandating they come back. These entities are still utilizing flexible workspaces for individual team needs, individual needs, some of these different offsites. So there is a need for, again, that's where I said complementing, supplementing on each end of that, the work from home and centralized office. You need both. You need each party to understand the how and why, and it may be different for every organization.
Awesome. No, I think that's all very, very helpful. We are running a little low on time though, so I'm going to ask my final prepared question for all you guys. And this one's looking forward, but the question is, moving forward, how should office strategy change to match the new reality and prepare workers for the next generation of hybrid work? I want all you guys to have a chance to answer this. Ieva, you want to take it away?
I think what I like about your question is what that reality is, and I think what we really have to think about as business owners, that getting together as much or as little with your team crucially depends on what kind of business you're doing and what's the stage of your business in terms of growth. For example, being a digital nomad is so cool right now. And you would have so many, I guess, Gen Zs especially, who have like no families yet, no dogs to take care, like they can travel all around the world and they want to be digital nomads. However, if you are an early stage startup, a business that's just starting, you can't have a team dispersed around the world. You have to get together because you're creating something from scratch. On the flip side, if you are a, let's say, more traditional business, you are MD running a team of 100, and your status or ego requires you to have an office space because you want to splash the logo, have an amazing address on your letterhead. But maybe 60% of your workers are actually doing customer support and sales calls every day, so it doesn't make sense for your team to get together. So I think there has to be, as Amber mentioned, that like open conversation with yourself and your what business goals you need to achieve, and also the team, what the team needs to do in order to achieve business results. We have learned, I think, during COVID to be more egoistic in terms of what I need. I want to work from home, or I want to go to an office 5 days a week, but it's important to think about what actually the team and your business needs.
Yeah, you've done really well to explain that. You've nicked a few of my points, but there we are. No, I think if I'm being completely honest, I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. There's so many different industries that need different things and has to have different things, depending, if they're in the finance sector, like you do want that fancy office. But yeah, I guess it's just about open and honest communication whilst you're still figuring it out, and just making sure that your team are happy, for one, because you want them to come back into the office. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, so good answer.
Charlie or Thomas?
I think we've kind of addressed some of this as we go through here. I mean, every organization, whether we're talking about those that are involved on the demand side, the occupier community, they're in a position where they need to rethink, reassess what they as an organization, what their individual teams, individual employees need. It's going to change. There's no doubt. And now is the time to really be, sitting back and saying, hey, let's forget about what we've known in the past. If we could start from scratch today based upon everything we know, how would our portfolio strategy look in the future? That's going to be different for every single one. So you have to really understand what is out there. There's still, I will go ahead and say, a lot of perceptions, some good, some bad, around the flexible industry. People need to understand, the constant change that has been underway. Again, diversification of products that are becoming available or will become more available in the future, and how that ultimately can, support their strategy. And I think that the supply side really needs to candidly be proactive themselves in thinking about these changes that are underway, because what we're seeing this in the traditional world. These large organizations are starting to give back portions of their respective portfolios. They're acknowledging the fact that they don't need as much of the centralized office as they have in the future. People are still committing long-term to some of those respective centralized offices, but how they're going to utilize them, what they're going to be their employees are going to need to be successful is going to be critical. And that supply and demands right now there's still a lot of unknowns, that it's going to take a lot of, candidly, collaboration between both sides of the coin to make sure that we understand what to deliver. Because we're in the very early innings, to use an American baseball euphemism, of the overall transformation of the workplace needs of the future. There's going to be a lot of pain. That's what a lot of people also need to acknowledge. There's going to be a lot of buildings that go back to respective lenders. And before some new buyer of said building comes into play, they need to think about, okay, this just happens, or this is going to continue to happen. How do I readdress my own asset management strategy to go deliver, again, that workplace diversification needed to be successful, which is everything from the traditional long-term leasing to everything we're talking about here in terms of the flexible workspace products that are going to be in higher and higher demand in the future.
Great. Yeah, Charlie, it sounds like we're still in kind of the early days of this tectonic shift, just still trying to figure it out. And Thomas, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. As I said in the beginning, the future of work is here and now. And there's too much values actually to step down or step out and step back. So the companies and the organizations out there, they do more, they can grow with existing workforce, right? They can set the next steps within days instead of weeks. They can operate with the maximum cost and environmental efficiency. That's something that it's a lot of talks about today, right? Keeping time to market despite pandemics or any external disruptions. And they can cut office. People can spend more time with their families, and they can spend more time with their personal health. So we need to help them actually getting there, providing that attractive work environment, using the office as a unifying place for cultural and creativity activities, ensuring accessible workplaces as we do, right? So that's what we are doing, and people they don't want to talk about and listen to visions. They need to know, what can you do to help me get there as soon as possible? Because one thing that we have used, maybe it's a bit dramatic, but I will end with that, it's adapt or die, or at least in the shape or form that you could be, if you actually adapt to this.
No, I love that. I love both that phrase, using the office as a unifying place, and even for operators, adapt or die. You need to change your products around to match the new needs of hybrid workforce. So we've concluded with, I guess, the questions we have from the panel, but we have time for one or two audience questions. I believe we have Kate out in the audience that has a mic in London. We have time for one or two questions. Does anyone have one? I believe Kate is walking around. I can't see very well.
There's one question.
Why does it on? Yeah, it is on. Yeah, bit cheeky, but I'm afraid for people that know me, this is how I work. Why does this discussion sound exactly the same as the sort of discussion we were having well over 2 years ago? In fact, probably within my own previous but one employer, probably something we were talking about 10 years ago. It just hasn't really moved on. And it seems very low level and binary. Talk about mandates, talk about coming in for the day. It's just doesn't feel like we're moving on very much to me.
Maybe COVID is starting to speed it all up. You're talking about 10 years ago. I don't think no one's gone through what happened during COVID. Do you think that COVID hasn't?
I think that's the thing. We've got a goldfish method. There were a number of organisations who were sorry, I should have kept it. There are a number of organizations who were working very flexibly, going back for, as long as that. My last but one role, I was a remote worker for 12 years. And that didn't mean I was remote all the time. I just took a decision on a daily basis, as Mark and I were saying earlier. What do I need to do today? What do I need to achieve? Who do I need to engage with to achieve that? And what's the best way of us engaging? And using all the tools to do that. And sometimes that was the corporate office, sometimes it was a third space, sometimes it was a partner's office, whatever. And just mixing up during the day and just doing that. I'm working as part of a team that worked geographically spread across the country anyway. So it's just incredibly frustrating that A, no lessons were learned from that, and B, that most businesses, and certainly the whole of real estate in the main, is still navel gazing after the pandemic. It was frustrating enough before, but I'm not expecting anyone to have the silver bullet, because it's not an easy thing to solve. I'll pass over to this gentleman.
I think it sounds like you're a prophet or way ahead of your time, but we've seen certain changes since COVID. Take an example, a company that took a whole floor in one of our buildings, 50 desks, and a small 6-person meeting room. Pre-COVID, they asked for more desks to be put in there, take away some of the breakouts, so they were operating at, say, 55, 60. Post-COVID, they grew during COVID as a fintech company. They asked us to remove half the desks, put in 3 more meeting rooms, and have more breakout areas, and give them 60, 70 keys. So I think the COVID has definitely changed the perception of how people can work. You must have been way ahead of your time. I think a lot of companies are only just realizing that they have to accommodate people working from home and this hybrid working, etc. It is pretty new. Although in my own organization, a lot of people who live outside of London used to come in pre-COVID, maybe 4 days a week, take Friday off, maybe Monday off. That kind of thing went on, but not to the extent that it's happening now, I don't think.
And I'll just make one quick comment on the
Fridays were very common, weren't they, pre-COVID? And everyone seems to have forgotten that the tube was half empty on a Friday for some reason. But thank you.
Just to slightly add on it. Oh, sorry, Charlie. Can I just add a little comment onto it? Thanks, Hen. I mean, 10 years ago, I was 18, so I was working in a bar. So I don't know what it was like 10 years ago, in your world. And I feel like if you had that flexibility, you're very privileged that you had a job that allowed you to experience that 10 years ago. I feel like now there's a lot more people that it's accessible to. There's way more people behind it now than I would imagine there was 10 years ago.
No, absolutely. It's just learning the lessons, though. Why are we
For sure.
talking about binary, like everyone's in on Wednesday or everyone's in on Thursday? There are things that it's just frustrating that
For sure.
discussion hasn't moved on. The whole mandate thing just feels frankly crude and childish, to be honest, and it's symptomatic of the fact that occupiers in particular are looking at this at a very low level. They're looking at the situation, they're a bit stunned by it. Management don't know how to deal with it. They're saying, we've got a building, what do we do with it? It's empty. It's not a building problem, it's an organizational problem. It should be taken up right up a level to look at the organization requirements, what you learned about how the organization functioned during COVID versus how you thought it was going to function, therefore how it should be shaped in the future, skills and knowledge required to populate that structure, and then the tools and resources that the teams and individuals need to support that and the future prosperity and growth of the business. And then property is just one function of that. But we're still obsessing about filling buildings, which is great for landlords, failing to do so because in the UK it's an average utilization of, or people are going in an average of I think 1.3 days a week. So utilization is still appallingly low, but yet we're still in this loop of discussing should people come in 2 set days a week, which I think is just backwards. And it's not going to work, is it? It's a childish approach. We need to approach it. It needs to be an adult conversation, but it's not even it's not even asking the fundamental questions, I suppose is what I'm saying. Ask the fundamental questions. Don't get obsessed about the building. Find out what the people need. And then your existing building might work. Great if it does. It might half work and we'll get rid of a couple of floors. If it doesn't work, it's a liability to go against the provision and to be mitigated.
Early final comments before we shut it down?
I know we're trying to shut down here, but I was just going to say the flexible industry has been around for 40 plus years. Some of the legacy executive suites, service office providers have been around forever. It's really the changes started happening in the 2010, 2015 range at certain levels, 15 to 20 different levels where we started getting into different diversifications of products. And it goes back to what's, I'm mentioned at various points, and I work for a large commercial real estate organization. Our industry is one of the, stalwarts in terms of how hard it is to make change. Things have been done the same way for decades. I was trained in the business that flexible locations do not make sense if you get beyond 3-5 people, period. Then you go to a centralized office. That's how I was trained. I obviously have, gone away from that training and believe very much so in the change, but we have to change the entire mindset of leadership within various organizations. And this goes from the occupier community to the institutional owner community, the lender community, and make sure that people acknowledge that this change is here, it's happening. And it's not going to happen as quickly as any of us would like. But I will say with COVID, it is happening way quicker than I was forecasting it was going to when I took on this role a few years ago.
No, I think we can all agree with that, how quickly the change has been. And it's glad that we are bringing up all these topics again. Hopefully we can make some changes now that we know what the problem is. So thank you everyone on the panel for joining us today, and in the audience for giving us some great insight. We really appreciate you being here at FlexWorld, both virtually and in London. Please stay on the line. We have a great show coming up next, talking about the future of work and creating benefits that benefit all tenants. So thanks guys again for joining, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day.